Okay, I am joined by Tom and Serena from ATOS in the UK, and I'm pretty keen for this conversation. I had a look at what you guys are doing, and I think that it's super exciting in relation to kids jiu-jitsu, the programs that you're offering, the level of jiu-jitsu that you're offering, and of course, anything related to ATOS has usually got a pretty good name to it as well. So can you please tell me a little bit about yourselves, your role in the gym, everything like that, please?
Yeah, so obviously I own the academy and I am the head coach across here in Solihull as well. So we have two academies now in the UK. We're opening a third one very soon. We was originally like GB when we first started here, and then
Mhm.
about 2 years ago we transitioned over to obviously Atos, as you know. Um, the programs obviously we like they're just growing like exponentially. Like there's a real right now it's just like a crazy thing. Like we only really had one kids class when I first started coaching. We did like mixed all ages, which as you can imagine, and obviously I've seen a lot of your stuff online as well. You can imagine how much like carnage that is. Like a 4 or 5 year old trying to train with a teenager is like impossible. But now we run like a 3 to 4s program, a 3 to 6, 6 to 9, 9 to 13. So we've gone from like having one kids class to four kids classes, and then those four run 7 days a week now. So
That is
it's fairly
incredible.
busy. Yeah.
First of all, can I say that I love that you have an age crossover? I really love that you just said 3 to 6 and and like onwards,
Yeah.
because the crossover, I'm sure that part of the reason that you guys do it as well is the crossover is like you can have a 6-year-old, they can be really small or not quite
Yeah.
developed or understanding of things yet, whereas they can have a 6-year-old that's a little savage. So you got to be
Yeah.
able
I
to
think
put
like
them.
weirdly, like obviously it wasn't even necessarily like an intentional thought process when we did that,
Mm,
which is kind of how we work the age groups. And there can be like some confusion around it because obviously some parents can be like, oh, well, he's 6 now. Does he go like in that one or that one? But what it enables us to do is kind of like actually help educate the parent on that decision and look at the child like individually and see, like say you could have like a massive 6 year old, you can have a small 6 year old, you can have one that's very confident, one that's not. You can have girls tend to, in my opinion, like the younger girls tend to be a little bit more emotionally and like physically more mature than the boys. The boys are a little bit more not messing around, right? But they have that little element of silliness to them, whereas the girls are a little bit more focused. So it definitely helps us make sure that people are in the right group and that the classes are as high quality as we can, even though obviously they are kids classes, so you still have to have that element of fun. But it keeps the progression, and obviously, like we've said, the growth of the team and the growth of the kids program has been like that big. Clearly, it's working out and it's doing very well.
that's fantastic. And so, Serena, what's your role in all of this? Where do you come in?
That camera's just tracking me when I know it's not really up there.
I'm one of the coaches here. Tom's built a really good team so far. So there's I think like sort of like four of us as core coaches, and then he's been bringing more people on as well. I'm one of like the newer coaches who's joined. I say newer, like I've been doing it still for like I think nearly 2 years now. I joined and I've been doing like the kids programs and stuff, helping with the women's program. There's Lucy over here behind me as well, who is also one of the female coaches here. So we've got like a nice little group. We do the women's classes, do the kids classes and stuff. And I also head up all the safeguarding here as well. So all of the processes in place for like looking after the kids, if there's any incidents, that kind of thing. We do all of that. So yeah, we've got
Fabulous.
nice.
It sounds like such a well-oiled machine. This is going to be good.
Yeah.
So, when you started developing your programs and things like that, in relation to kids, I know you said that you went from like a one kind of age group that was mixed, and then now you've split them up. What do you think has been the biggest difference that you have noticed between, other than the absolute carnage that can happen when you've got one age group? Well, what
Yeah.
have you noticed has been probably the biggest improvement between the mixed age group altogether and your split age groups?
So I think so. The mixed age group, weirdly, I'm not massively opposed to it, right? Like I did kind of enjoy it in a weird way. Like it was carnage, but I think one thing that you get from a mixed class, which we still kind of have, which is important, and obviously there's quite an important point to why I think our kids program is quite successful, is that the younger kids kind of have a reference of somebody older doing it, but they're not an adult.
Yeah.
And something that I've tried to do in the classes, I've always tried to do it, and it's not to get cheap labor, but I've tried to get this kind of feeling from some of the older kids, some of the teens especially. We have like two great kids here that are in the teens program who help out, and they kind of act like an older brother, older sister, influencer inside the room. And we're kind of like the parent, or like the, the more authoritarian role. Not that we coach our classes like that, but just, naturally and psychologically for the kids, they see, the adults or the older people as like the ones in charge, and the younger ones are more like their friends. So
Yeah.
in the mixed group, I used to see, like, obviously when some of the older kids would help the younger kids, it worked really well because they were trying to be like the older kids, right? Like we all have those older kids want to be the cool kids.
Yeah.
And now, even though we've split the age groups, we still have teenagers jump in some of the classes to help out and be a reference for the younger kids as well. But I think the biggest thing I've seen is like just massively in development, because how you approach the class is way different. So, it's very similar to coaching adults as well. If you're teaching a beginner's class and it's full of advanced guys, they don't get as much enjoyment out of it, and vice versa. If you're teaching all advanced techniques and the beginners don't understand, it's difficult. So it's enabled us now to really like kind of specialize in each age group. Like our 3 to 4 year olds class is vastly different, of course, to the 13-year-olds in the teens, but it still has the same fundamentals. It still has the same kind of like ideas in it. They're just obviously way more adapted to make it obviously more fun. And of course, even like, your own content that we see online, like making it more game based, making it more enjoyable. I think it's enabled us to do that without losing other kids, because that's always our biggest fear. And obviously when we had a mixed class, I can be very honest, as a business owner, like you need to get numbers in the door, you need to pay bills, you need to pay wages, right? So you're trying to get as many people in as you can, but your quality is not always ideal. And then once you get to a position where you can invest in more coaches and you can actually start splitting up the program, I believe then you get obviously the greatest benefit, even financially, because the groups grow. But you also get the benefit of, you actually know you're making an impact, and you actually know you're teaching in a more positive way, right? Because a lot of the time, some people can teach, but I don't really think they're getting the best benefit out of it. I think we're just trying to teach because we have to, or we feel like we should. And I'd say one of the biggest mindset shifts I had is prioritizing the kids program and making that like priority one. Whereas I think a lot of academies, that's actually like secondary. It's not a priority at all. It's just a thing that they think they should do, or because everyone else is doing it, they'll just offer it too. But I very much went the other way. Like, I love adults, don't get me wrong, I love adults class, but yeah, kids classes is for me, that's what our whole business and ethos is built on.
Oh, that is beautiful. That's so cool. Because, and I'm really looking forward to this because we're in a situation, our gym is not a franchise. We just went, all right, my partner and I were like, right, we're just going to get in there and do the best that we can with what we've got. And I think we had like 60,000 Australian dollars, and we were like, all right, what can we do with
Come on.
that?
That's a big budget.
It was pretty good. But the mats, like for anyone who's never built a gym, the mats
Yeah, I
are
know.
like the most ridiculously expensive thing that you're like,
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting it to cost that much. And so when we got
Yeah, I
in
don't
there,
think people don't believe you when you say it, to be honest.
yeah,
Yeah, they don't
yeah. And
believe
you're
you.
like, we're like, what do you mean the mats are like $30,000 to build a platform and to put the mats down? And anyway,
Yeah.
but we were like, all right, it was just my partner and I, and we were like, we just are gonna slog it out, do the work. And it's finally got to the point now where we're like, okay, you start to realize that as much as you really hate to say it, numbers are important, like you said,
Mhm.
because like, okay, I need to eat. So we got to
Yeah.
pay
Like,
bills at some
I
point.
think it's one of the weirdest things in jiu-jitsu, right? Because I don't know where the mindset came from, and like I have no idea. Like I said, like I would love to know, but I feel like a lot of academy owners or jiu-jitsu coaches in general, and it may be because most academy owners are like the head coach. I don't think we're very like financially like articulate with like the opportunities and things. And I'll be like really honest, it doesn't inspire anybody else to get involved. Like I always like to refer it to football, right? And obviously, don't get me wrong, I'm not on footballers' wages, but um, if you see a generation of kids want to become footballers, of course they're passionate about football, but the undertone there is that they're very financially successful. They can live a great lifestyle, but we don't really promote that in jiu-jitsu. Like we try to promote like hardship and we struggle and we have nothing, and like it doesn't inspire any coaches to get on board, and it doesn't inspire any kids to pursue that as a career. So as much as I don't like to talk about money because it can be quite crude to a degree. Like it's very important that you like show success. It's very important that you can become successful, and hopefully that leads a generation of coaches to want to do the same, and most importantly gets more kids in the academy to see that as a potential career path and business idea in the future. Because like I say, from the outlook, jiu-jitsu doesn't look that very rewarding, right? But I know firsthand, in my experience, like it's been a very rewarding business model that's worked very well for me. So I try to pass that on. Obviously, I try not to be too brash or too flashy because I don't really like that either. But I think it's important that people know and people are aware that there is a great business there. There is a sustainable business and there's great career paths. And I think that will drive more kids into the academy, of course. But more importantly, it drives more coaches into the academy that actually, if they can make a full-time career of this, how good can they be? Because let's be honest, most coaches are part-time. They're doing other careers. They're doing it on their evenings and weekends, and they're volunteering, which is like, that's an amazing thing to do. And like, I have so much respect for it. But if you're working a regular job, how much time are you actually putting into becoming the best coach you can be? How much investment are you putting into yourself? To be a great coach, it's tough. Do you know what I mean? So I think it's important that you show that, and numbers, let's be honest, that's what drives that. Look at all the most successful academies in the world, right? Your ATOS headquarters, AOJ is probably up there. I'm not sure of any others. They're just kind of the main two that I see. They have ridiculous amount of numbers. Their programs are full. They're getting 100 guys show up at 6 a.m. and financially they're doing very well. So I think it's important, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, you've absolutely nailed it. And I understand that little hesitation to talk about money a little bit because it's kind of like this thing within our culture of jiu-jitsu in general, where it's like we're humble. We're very humble about things. And as important it is always, socially to be humble. But at the end of the day, yeah, you've got to make a living out of this. And it is something that I have seen as well in Australia where you get your black belt, you have studied your whole life jiu-jitsu, you've done this amazing thing, and then it's like, well, what do I do with this now? Like I've got it, what do I do now? And then it's like, you open a gym because that's what you do. So then you open a gym, but you have no understanding of business. You got no idea what you're doing. And then you end up a slave to your own business because you don't know how to run it. Yeah. And so then you end up with these black belts who are stuck in their own business, running it day to day because there's no one else to do the work, and they don't know how to use business to grow it to be able to have employees. And
I think one thing I would add to that as well, one thing that I think is kind of, again, not necessarily like, I don't think it's an intentional negative mindset, but I personally believe that, the mindset it requires to maybe get to the black belt, maybe to have trained, 10, 12 years and, gone through those tough times or whatever, and those challenging times on the mat. I think that we all have this mentality, which is incredible for competition and incredible for life, that like we will fix it and like we will find a way around it. But I think when you start jumping into like business, you're jumping in with that same mindset that like, I'll figure it out. Like I'll learn how to do it on the job. And like, don't get me wrong, like that's something that I did. And okay, fair enough, it worked out, but that doesn't work out for everybody. Like sometimes you need to really invest in learning the skills necessary, becoming like business literate, and understanding that it's not quite as easy or as simple as, and everyone falls into the trap. I see people do it all the time. They go, "Oh, I can open a gym. It's easy. All I need to do is get a space, put some mats down, and I'll have 1,000 members." It doesn't always quite work like that. And, you know, I have a lot of people near me try to do the same. And unfortunately, they are where they are and we are where we are.
Yeah. Oh, completely agree. And my partner is probably one of the first ones to be that little bit naive where we were like, same thing. Okay, this is what we're going to do. Like, I was a teacher for 10 years. I was teaching, and he was like, okay, I need you to take my kids' classes. Like, is that okay? And I was like, yeah, of course. Like, no worries. Sure.
I'll figure it
I'll
out. Yeah.
take, I will teach a full-time primary school teaching job, and then I'll come to the gym in the afternoon and teach the kids.
Yeah.
I don't know what planet I was on when I thought that I was going to be able to do that, because who runs everything other than what's happening on the mats?
Yeah.
Like the
If it's
jiu-jitsu is the smallest part.
Yeah, I
of
agree.
every-
The actual the coaching element and, like you say, taking a class is like the tiniest part of the running of an academy, in my opinion. Like, that's actually the enjoyable part. Like, that's the bit that
Yeah.
everyone wants to do. That's the lovely bit. Do you know what I mean? And yeah, if I could do that now, I would be happy. But you have to do the phone calls, emails, complaints, this, that, generating leads. Yeah, paying too much
Yeah.
tax in the UK.
Oh yeah. Yeah. All of this stuff that you're like, I never thought that I would be here. But if you're
Yeah,
watching this and you're like, I really want to open a gym, please don't listen to us thinking
yeah,
that
yeah.
it's not a good idea. It
No,
is a
it
good
is. It
idea.
is like that because, like, I started out. I was in a community center and I was just teaching 2-3 days a week. I was just hiring the space, rolling some mats out, and like I never had any thoughts. I'm not gonna say I didn't have aspirations, but I never had any thoughts that I'd be like managing an academy or managing two academies for that matter that have the amount of students we have or anything like that. So there is an element to like learning on the job, and obviously it's important that you have that resilience and you can adapt like that. But like I say, it's not as straightforward as, you know, it looks from the outset. Do you know what I mean? I've seen a lot of people try to do it and not be as successful. And even great black belts, you know, like your competition skill set and your ability to, you know, do technique is not necessarily like a prerequisite for a successful business owner.
Yeah. And so when you were starting with this, uh, did you have any background in business at all?
No, I've always been like fairly entrepreneurial.
Yep.
And I had some really like great close friends that were great references. So even when I first started training like blue purple belt, a lot of the guys I was training with went and opened their own gyms. And I kind of seen that, not mistakes necessarily. I don't think they did anything massively wrong, but I seen some of the things that they were doing, and, you know, I had my own thoughts and ideas on how that could be improved. I can be brutally honest. I can be really open and honest. Like, a lot of my own ideas and initial ideas, I couldn't really put into practice when I was part of certain affiliations and things like that, which is, you know, that's understandable. They have their own standards. They have their own ideas. Not a problem at all. But what I found with Atos and obviously working with Andre and Angelica, like, they had a lot of belief and trust in me based on the numbers that we have here and how successful we've been. So they allowed me really the freedom of putting my own ideas into practice, into place. And I always did that in business. But since I've been able to do that actually on the mats and, you know, in our content, our social media, I'm not bound by what I can and can't do or what I should and shouldn't do. I really feel like we've kind of gone to another level right now. And, you know, we're just continuing to rise. So I think that was an important step. And that's not to tread down on affiliations or anything like that. Like, they're incredibly important. And I think they're a brilliant tool for guys that maybe don't have that little bit of business acumen, let's say, because it's a safety net that can, you know, you can manage a reasonably successful academy with that branding and that name and that support network. But I think if you look at, you know, especially some of the guys in the UK and some of the guys that I look up to, they kind of did their own thing in a way. And they are part of affiliation still. Like I say, like if you look at Atos, like, we're all affiliated and they have some of the best academies in the world, right? So I think it's important that you have that freedom as a coach of your own school, as somebody that's grew up here, knows the area more than, you know, somebody in a head office somewhere.
Yeah.
I think it's important that you have that freedom of expression.
Yeah. Yeah, beautiful. So before I am going to dive back into kids, but I do think that this is a really important conversation to have as well, because a lot of the coaches that I am working with and that watch these, they're in a similar situation. They're black belt head coaches. They're people who have their own gyms, and being able to talk about things like this is equally as important as let's getting into the actual part of the kids' jiu-jitsu. But before I dive straight back into there, when you started out, is there any, what am I trying to say? Is there like a particular a way that you were able to access certain information that helped you to be able to feel more confident in your business and entrepreneurial skills? Was there any YouTubes? Were there books? Like if you're a coach watching this and you're like, okay, I really want to do this and I want to take charge,
Yeah.
what did you do?
Yeah, so weirdly, I will be honest, like I didn't really have anything like that.
Yeah.
Not to try and like take all the credit
No.
from for myself, but it was just a learning process and something I've always done, and you know, that may be down to my mindset in jiu-jitsu potentially. I've always tried to like learn things like to its entirety. So, you know, just like you would in a position, right? If you want to work on your wrestling, you're working on your wrestling. So in business, I thought, well, this is a kind of a gap or a hole that I'm not very experienced on. Like when I first started, I was like, I had no idea how to do certain things. So I'd sit with my accountant and I'd have a conversation. But then I think what a lot of guys do is they just let that person handle it. And then they go, oh, my accountant will sort that. Or, oh, the admin will sort that. I have this belief, and I still have this belief today. I say it all the time to the guys that are like office staff and admin staff. Like, there is not a single role in the gym that I can't do, which enables me then to bring people in to do that role better than me. So I think that's a very important point, that you do every single role. Like I can clean the mats, I can clean the toilets. I don't have an ego to say that I'm not going to do it. I don't do it that often, I'll be honest, but I can. I can bring on the phones. I can sign people up. I can send emails. I can coach. Like there is not a part of this business that I run that I cannot do. But that now enables me to put people in those positions that do it better than me. So I can get better kids coaches than me potentially. I can bring in better salespeople than me, better cleaners than me, or whatever. But you will only be able to get to that point if you can do everything yourself, because you have to be that person at the start, or it's impossible. You know, I watch a little bit of like business podcasts now, and you kind of have to get to a position and a point. So you have to be able to do every role, every job, and then when you get to maybe it's a turnover. In our world, it's normally like a number, right? If we get to 500 students, now I have the ability to invest in experts in those roles, and then that will take you from 500 to 1200 is the hope. Doesn't always work like that, of course, but that's kind of how I looked at it from the beginning. I said, like, I'll do every class. I used to teach every class. I used to clean. I used to do everything. Admin, social media, content. I used to try and create, like, you know, edit my own videos. And so I did everything on my own. And then now we're fortunate enough, like we have a content guy, we have like admin team, we have sales staff, we have apprentices on the desk, we have coaching staff that are better than me, like, you know, so that's the way I kind of looked at it. And that if I was going to give anyone any advice, that's what I would do. Learn every single role and you can do it all. And then you'll build it up to a point where you can hopefully have it all done for you instead.
That is fantastic advice. Honestly, fantastic. Beautiful. I'll take that on myself as well, hey? Okay.
Yeah, but also like it's so like freeing, and you get so much confidence knowing that you can as well, because
Yeah.
like I'm not bound to anything. So like, you know, with all due respect, and obviously I would hate this to ever happen, but like if somebody was to leave our team, for example, like they're not happy or they know they go, like there isn't a role that I can't fill. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I'm available. So I think that's very important confidence wise for a business owner, because you know you're not like a slave to others, right? Like if I opened a restaurant, I'm not a chef. If my chef leaves, I'm stuck. But if you know my coach leaves, I can jump in and coach. If my sales girl or guy leaves, I can jump on the phones. If the content guy is had enough, I can do my own content. So I'm very confident, and that allows me to then really like hammer and keep driving, because I know at any point if a wheel falls off, I can be a wheel. Do you know what I mean? So we
Yeah.
can go as fast as we want.
Yeah, perfect. Remind me to actually get you in contact with my partner at the end of this because
Yeah, for sure.
the way that you both speak is so similar in relation to business and running everything that I'm like, it's like I'm actually having a conversation with him in the same way. So I think you guys would get along really, really well. So remind me at the end to get you
Yeah,
in
for
contact
sure,
with
man.
him. Yeah.
Yeah, let's do it.
Um, so
You don't have an
okay,
affiliation yet either, so there's still time.
no, that's right. We don't. I think there's one in Brisbane. There's one in Brisbane. I
Yes.
think there's one in Townsville, but that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I've seen the one in Townsville. We had some visitors from there a couple of weeks ago. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
they're
don't know
lovely.
Australia that well, to be honest. So if you know, if you get the chance to fly me out and look around, I'll be there.
You can come and have a look. That's okay because I don't know that much. I've never been to Europe. I've not been to the UK. I'm
Yeah,
that
don't
Aussie
bother.
that hasn't been. To be fair, your weather, the weather's never really sold it to me.
Yeah,
I've
no, the
never
weather's
been like,
terrible. It's horrible. Australia's taking the win.
absolutely. Okay, let's get back to kids. I would love to know um, how you structure your classes. I'd love
Yeah.
to know, take me through a session from beginning to end, like a general routine of what happens throughout each age group. You don't
Yeah,
have to go too
so yeah, most of them are like, to be fair, they all run very similarly, which I think is important too. Just have that like continuity across classes. So we have like, we do a warm up at the start. That will vary depending on the level of the class. So if it's a beginner's class, we kind of do a more relaxed warm up, like star jumps, you know, push ups, break falls, including a lot of like the basic movements that obviously you need to know. If they're more advanced guys, like I don't need them practicing break falls necessarily. So they'll go for a jog around the edge and things like that. And then we normally will start with like some form of standing technique, right? It's very standard. Like I believe a lot of academies run like this. We'll do a standing technique and then we'll try to do like two grounded techniques. In the younger kids classes, like the 3 to 4 and the 3 to 6 and stuff like that, we'll just focus on one technique mainly for the session because I think more than that's too much. And then they will play a game-based specific at the end. That's around the technique, right? So if you've been working on close guard, you'll play monster guard, right? Keep the monster trapped in your legs. And then depending again on the level or if it's teens or whatever, they'll do some more free sparring if they're experienced enough to have that freedom. And that's pretty much it. I try to include a few games here and there, especially if the session's stale. But I think one of the most important things of being a kids coach and definitely from like the staff we have and how well they do is like we have a rigid routine to a degree, which is important, right? Because kids need structure. And again, I was reading your post in the car on the way here about structure and chaos on the mat. So structure is very important. But also it's your ability to bend in that structure instead of like snapping if you're too rigid. It's your ability to bend and go, you know what? Kids are not quite on it today. Like we need to slow the technique down. We probably need to play more of a game. We need to be a little bit more silly or a little bit more serious. Like it's a skill. It really is a skill to read the room as a kids coach and way more of a skill than adults, which is why you see most people only want to coach adults, right? Because it really challenges you to, like I say, be resilient, but be very reactive. Most people don't like being reactive, like I don't, especially in business, right? You don't like things popping up out of nowhere. But that is the kind of job role as a kids coach, right? Like sometimes you can go into a class and there's 20 kids that are just on it. You can hammer through like 3 techniques. You're like, oh my God, like they're doing the technique unbelievably well. And then sometimes you'll go in and there'll be like 5 kids. So you think this is easy. There's only 5 of them, but they are just gone. Energy's off. One's there running. Like, you know how it is.
Yeah.
And you have to kind of just go, listen, I'm not probably going to get through the main points of De La Hiva. But really, that's not your role. Your role is to like give them an introduction into Jiu Jitsu and keep them around long enough to hopefully make them want to do it even more, right? And I think that's the ages that we set. I think it's important, like kind of the groups that we have, because by the time they get to 6 to 8 and by the time they get to teens, they're very, I'm not going to say serious, but they're very focused. They're very prepared. They're very comfortable with the room. They're very comfortable with the training area and environment. And I think that happens and starts with a great foundation in our 3 to 4s and 3 to 6 classes. And I would say to most kids coaches and most academies that your 3 to 4 year olds class, or the class with your 3 year olds in, is the most important, because that's what's going to set precedent for future classes and as they develop through the academy. They're going to be your adults, aren't they, at some point? So if you can set those kind of standards and that kind of training standard early on, when they're 20 years old, it's going to be an absolute joke, isn't it? So I can't wait for that day.
Yeah. I even had this afternoon, I had a little boy who started with me when he was 3 and he's turning 5 in January. So I like was giving him another strap today and I was like, man, this kid he knows all of it. He knows exactly what's going on. You could say anything and he knows exactly how to do it. And obviously he's still little, his focus is still developing. But if that kid sticks with jiu-jitsu, I'm going to be really scared of him in 10 years'
Yeah,
time
he's gonna be an
because
absolute machine. But like,
he's gonna be a
I even
machine.
see it with my own kids. So like, obviously, I have 2 kids of my own. I try to avoid like teaching their class. Not intent, like it is intentional. I'm not gonna lie, it is intentional because I don't want to be that like dad that's overly focused on my own child, right? And I think visually, I've never really liked that. Like, paying too much attention to my own kids over others, it doesn't work well for me. So my own kids are in the program, and one of them is 4, one of them is 5. And even when they come home, I'll ask them questions like they can recite exactly what they did in the class. And sometimes I'll watch them, they don't even do the technique. Like, of course, they have bad days like everyone. But when they come home, they're like, oh, yeah, we was working on single leg X. Like, I was like, okay. Yeah, it's like mad. And then they'll like be in the bedroom or be in the hallway and they'll literally demo single leg X and show me what it is. And
That's so cool.
I have a lot of parents tell me that too. Like, even when their kids in the room and they look a little bit vacant or their energy's off or they're not quite paying attention, it's going in. Like, weirdly, it's going in, and it's hard to like quantify because how do you know? But like, I had a parent come to me the other day and he said, oh, like, he got me in like a choke and he was telling me like how we can do this, and this move and that move. I had no idea he even knew what that was. And that is the power of like, a 3-year-old, 4-year-old developing brain. Like, they are just a sponge, which is equally as important why you set the standard how it should be. And you have to become a role model, right? Like, everything you do in that room, the way you look, the way you speak, the way you talk, your enthusiasm, your energy, they're going to copy that. And I think that's a huge lesson for most coaches too, right? Because again, it's a negative culture. I've been around jiu-jitsu for long enough. When I used to work at certain academies, and not to knock the academies, right? But I think it was more an individual's problem. We used to have like 5, 6 of us that used to train, used to teach, and you're like, oh, I'm on the 3 to 5 class. Oh man, like that used to be like a genuine reaction sometimes to like a certain class. People were like, oh god, I've got kids this week, or oh, you know what I mean? And like, don't get me wrong, like I understand that it can be a tough afternoon. Especially if you're like, training full time and you're tired and whatever, you got a comp coming up. But I think that's something that I've tried to like flip. Like, I want people to be excited and enthusiastic about, having that chance to work with a 3-year-old, even though, from the outset, or it might not seem that appealing, but it's such an honor. It's such an incredible experience. Like, to have an impact on a child's life is so powerful that, it cannot be took for granted, and it has to be like you have to want to do it. You know what I mean? You have to want to be there.
Yeah, completely agree. And I think that one of the things that I was even speaking to one of my own coaches about the other day was, if I had of thrown my coaches in without any knowledge of children, without any prior skill of even me just being on the mats and guiding them through how I run the classes, how I speak, how I interact, all of those things, if I had have just been like, okay, do you want to teach my kids classes? And they were like, I'll be like, free membership and I'll pay you. And they're like, all right, sounds good. I chuck them onto my mat. Of course they're going to hate it because they have absolutely no idea what they're doing. And then they're throwing these kids that aren't going to listen at all. They're going to hate it because you haven't created the culture or the background or any foundations at all for them to feel safe as a coach to show the children that they're safe. And if the kids don't feel safe, they're not going to learn.
Yeah, I think for us, like we've always been like super fortunate that like people have wanted to like help out to a degree.
Mm.
Obviously to further their coaching experience and knowledge and to be able to improve. So
Yeah.
we've always had people ask to like volunteer or to help with the kids' classes. And normally like again, we've had, copious amounts of people that have volunteered and helped out and, done their thing, but how many do we actually still have as staff or actually have as kids coaches right now is probably like six. But I think when you start from a place where it's like out of, like you say, wanting to do it, there's much more potential, right? Like the guys that are trying to do it for, like you say, oh, like I'll teach kids, but like I want a membership, or if I teach the kids, I want like a little bit of money. Like I understand money, like I said to you earlier on, like I'm not hiding away from it, right? Like we make
Yeah.
good money, but I think you have to have this passion to teach kids. Like with adults, it's different, right? If a coach approaches me and they're a great coach, I have no problem paying them to do an adults class. Like, of course,
Yeah.
is a little bit less important. But whenever you're going to work with kids, if you're not passionate enough to do it for free, you're probably not good enough to do it paid. You can clip that.
That, do you know what? In my head, I was like, I'm gonna get this because that was so good. So it's so funny that you said that.
Yeah, I'm
Oh,
a
too
meme
good.
generator
I can't
for
wait.
various different reasons.
This will be too good. With your kids' programs, then, I'd
Mhm.
like to know a little bit about how you train. Now, from looking at my content, you would know I'm a big advocate for games and CLA, and I'm never
Yeah,
against conversation with people who don't use it in any way
yeah,
because I grew up, I trained in Jiu Jitsu, not using it myself. And
yeah.
so it comes from a place of curiosity. I never come from a place of like, this is what you should do because it's just
Mhm.
not how I am. But I'd really love to know how you maintain engagement when you use techniques and drilling with kids,
Mhm.
please.
So, Um, a technique I use, and I use it across the kids' classes, and this will massively depend on numbers, right? So, I feel like in the teens' classes, they're old enough and mature enough that I can show the demo, show the technique that we're working on, theme of the week, whatever that may be. They can go off, they can practice, they can do like 2 for 2, they can drill, more traditional way, of course. And I can get around, I can help them out, right? Let's do this here, put this there. What I think is very important to that, which is probably my subconscious CLA, is that I work on specific things in specific, right? Like we're just trying to do this, we're trying to achieve that. And the specific almost becomes the CLA. And I think, in my opinion, and definitely in our classes, it's probably a third of the class is spent doing specific and sparring, which is,
Yeah.
what others would say is like the game based kind of way. So I do a little bit of both, if I'm honest, and how I perform the drill. So if we've got like 6 to 8s or 3 to 5s, and it's super busy, I get them to do the drills like together in steps. So like the whole room will be on step 1, step 2, step 3, and then what I actually find is they're wanting to perform inside of a team, inside of like the whole performance as well as just their own. So sometimes if you're just drilling for yourself, you're not really bothered, you're not in the mood, you're like, oh, whatever. But because everyone else is on step 1, I need to be on step 1. They're looking around, they've got the right grips, and they go step 2. Boom, they're at step 2. They're like, is everyone else on step 2? Yes, yes, yes. Like, and then they've got it down as like a whole performance
Mm.
rather than just individually. Because we know as individuals, right? Like, with accountability, we can let ourselves down. We don't care. We can make a mistake or make an error. We're not going to stress about it. But when it's part of like a whole team performance, like you actually see them care to be in the right step at the right time, at the right moment. And of course, like I said, the actual drilling side, we probably do like a 10-minute warm up. Drills are going to be 10, 12, 15 minutes max. And then we're doing like 2 rounds of specific for 3, 4 minutes. We're doing free sparring for 5 minutes. Like
Yeah.
it's kind of 50-50. And like I said, subconsciously, I've always found that worked really well. Before there was like labels on things and, you know, how people
All
are
the
right now. And
steps.
not a knock against them, do you know what I mean? But before
Yeah.
that was, before I even knew what it was, probably myself, we
Yeah.
always used to practice drills, to get in the motion, almost as a warm up, in my opinion. Because a drill without any resistance is just it's choreographed practicing, isn't it? And how many times do you drill and practice a move, and you practice it probably, 25% off because there's no actual real resistance. So my head position doesn't need to be great when I pass. My hip's not tight enough to their hip, but I've just got past the legs and I'm chilling, past the legs, chilling, because like there's no resistance. I feel like you learn the most when you go to specific because you have to achieve a goal. And also, your partner is only worried about one goal their way. And I think once you start introducing free sparring, it can actually become too free. And there's so many options and so much things to do in jiu-jitsu, so many things to work on. You've got standing game, bottom game, guard, passing, like all of these things are going on that sometimes you're just beating people just not through accident. I'm not going to say it like that, but just from going to a different style. Whereas in specific, like you've got to pass, you've got to hold, or you've got to try and stay on the back. I've got to try and shake you off. Like you've just got one primary focus, and you can get it to work. And like I say, I try to use that in the kids' class, in the younger classes to make it more appealing. It's more game based, right? You're not going to be talking. Like I think it's more of your language around it, like in a teens class I can say to them, oh, we're doing close guard, keep your partner in your legs, try sweep or submit, but a 3-year-old's like, what's that? So it's like, monster guard, or like Serena comes up with these games in her privates, like don't let the ghost out the castle or some shit, I don't know, right? Like, but as silly as it is, like that sticks in a kid's brain, and it's like it's fun and interactive without being too technical and too heavy on the jiu-jitsu side, which as black belts, as coaches, we love that side, right? We're very passionate. We can get a little bit too over eager to have the kids talking in a certain way or understand certain terminology when, it's just fun to them, isn't it? They're play fighting with a few rules, right? That's what I always say. So I try to keep that playful as well.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, I think I love the idea of how you're managing the larger groups in that environment, because that is something that I even reflect back to when you were talking then about myself when I would be drilling at my gym that I was at before we opened our own. Man, I was so lazy. What the hell?
Yeah.
Like we would be doing something and it'd be like, okay, go, like you're gonna do this, still heave a position, and my hook would be lazy. I'd be like barely getting through the movement myself, and then you go into applying it, and I was like, well, of course I can't apply it. One, I had no resistance, but that's okay. But two, I didn't put the effort in to actually learn the position.
Yeah.
I was just.
I think I think one thing, and this is just from my observations of doing the class, when most people are drilling, they're doing the move, they're going through the motion. Obviously, if they're a beginner, they're a little bit more probably focused on the drill, right? Because they're trying to learn jiu-jitsu, trying to learn this sport. But I feel like once you've got a kind of baseline knowledge or like some understanding, probably around blue belt, to be honest, and onwards, I feel like because you know enough that you kind of know the positions, even if you're being shown like a really cool detail that's like just blowing your mind that you've never seen before, you'll practice it once or twice. But then I feel like I always used to feel, and I still feel this now in certain classes, everyone's just kind of waiting around for the specific. They're like, yeah, I'm drilling, it's cool, but I'm going to wait to do it for real. And then I always like ask myself, like, I wonder why is it because that the drills are boring? No, because the drill's pretty cool. I think it's because they want to find out, like, if I actually implement this, what is going to happen? Like, what really happens? And you can get the guys like, and I've been guilty of this sometimes. It can be annoying to the coach. You get the guys that end up almost doing specific straight away because they're testing each other, like, oh, well, does this grip work? And I'm like, guys, we're drilling, man, relax. Like, we're doing specific in a bit. And I'm like, well, actually, should I be telling them to relax, or they're just trying to get to the part of the session that they enjoy the most, which you're not going to enjoy every element, so you do have to kind of rein that in too. But is that where they're getting the most feedback and processing the most information? And I would probably say yes, because like I say, I can show you a grip, but if I can't get that grip in the specific, or I can't get to that position, like what does it really mean? It becomes frustrating, doesn't it? So I think it's important that you have a lot of specific and a lot more, game style. I've started implementing that a lot, and some of the sessions that I get good feedback off is like the ones when we're preparing for comp. I do an hour of specific like positional work. And I give them two things as well, which I think is, maybe other guys do it too. I'm not trying to say I'm any different, but I give them a physical task, but then I also give them like a psychological task. So the first task might be like, oh, hold the back and keep the back. But then psychologically, I'm saying, well, if you're the guy on the bottom, you're winning, and the guy on top's losing. So if they don't get hooks in, even though they're keeping the back, they've not scored, and you're gonna win. Like I just give them like a comp scenario, and
Yeah, I like
some of the scenarios I make up are like completely unrealistic. Like you're never really going to be in a position where you're in turtle and you're winning or losing, but it just provokes an emotional response for the person to try a little bit more or to create more urgency, and get a little bit more out of the training rather than just because I think sometimes it can just be a little bit linear, specific training. We just go, okay, bottom person, sweep or submit, person on top, just pass. I like to
yeah.
add an element of, no, you're losing or like you're winning. You have to do this to maintain winning, and you have to do this to, and then it just like provokes this little bit more of urgency and just a little bit of a difference. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
definitely think it challenges them a little bit more as well.
Hi, I like that a lot. Yeah. And I mean, we do the same sort of thing with giving the focus to be able to get to the
Yeah,
outcome when
yeah,
you've got your CLA and stuff in there too.
yeah,
And okay, I'd like to know a little bit about your kids' competition. So, do you have a group of kids that compete? How does that look in your gym? Is competition not necessarily something that you focus on so much? I know
yeah,
for myself, we originally opened our gym with the intention of being like a competition focused gym. Stupid idea. Don't do that because you need to build a foundation for your gym
yeah,
before you even have a team. So
yeah,
don't do that. But as that developed and grew, we then started to realize that that wasn't actually what we wanted ourselves. And so we have steered away from that. But
yeah.
I am always interested to speak to people who do have kids programs that are a big competition focus or, how you manage that.
Yeah, like we just try to make sure that it's like separate. So in all the regular classes, it just like your academy, like anyone's academy, we just teaching the class. We're trying to hope for the best outcomes of partnering people, level dependent and things like that. And then I kind of try to separate the whole comp idea and comp class. I actually rephrased how I name the classes because I felt like every time I called someone a comp class, I would get really I'd get low uptake because some kids were fearful of it. I think sometimes if you put the word competition around things, it can create a little bit of like anxiety and stress or pressure that I think is unnecessary. So I actually just use like advanced kids or advanced program to, kind of lead them more into competition based techniques or ideas or theories. And then I do a UK training day once a month where I offer everyone in the UK to come down on a Saturday. We do about 3 hours of training. Like each hour is like a theme. So like hour of like practicing techniques, an hour of specific, an hour of sparring. And obviously you get some incredible athletes and talent show up, which is great. And within the academy, I have like, some very good competitors, but again, they're in regular class. I'm not going to treat them any differently to anybody else. And I realize that when they need that extra push or that extra focus, sometimes I work with coaches one-to-one or in small groups, which is amazing. And it's a great income stream for the coaches too. Or we just try to change the emphasis or the kind of mindset around the advanced class. And we start focusing a little bit more competition based. But I'm a huge advocate for mixed classes. I don't really like to separate too much. I really don't like. I think age is important. Of course, you have to. The age discrepancy is important, but I think actually technique wise, I heard Hodge Gracie say this before, like what makes a technique advanced or beginner is not necessarily the technique itself, it's your ability to pull it off against somebody that's good, and how well you can get that technique to work. So I don't try to, split techniques like, oh, this is an advanced technique, this is a beginner technique, because really and truly, like, what are you basing that off? You're just basing that off that seems more difficult to apply. So it's not necessarily the technique that's difficult, it's the application of. And the application of that technique comes from, of course, practicing it, trying to practice it live, specific, you know what I mean? So I try to work it like that. And, again, be really honest, business side, competitors, competition, athletes, kids, adults, they are not the greatest people to have around the team for growth of an academy, and they're not the greatest to have around for like economic growth, let's say, because they want a lot of attention. That's fine. They take a lot of attention. but also their mindsets can be very different to, you know, a student that just wants to learn, improve, and become part of a great environment. They're quite selfish, and I know that because I'm a competitor, and you know, as I head into, like, you know, the twilight years of my competition days, let's say, as I'm getting a little bit older, I've realized that, you know, those selfish kind of days where, you know, it's all about you and you're training for yourself takes a lot away from the growth of an actual academy, which is why mostly, if you look at the very successful gyms right now, the head coaches are probably not the best competitors in the world, are they? They have been, may have been, could be, but in that moment, if you're trying to grow a successful team, I don't think you're going to be the best competitor you can be as well.
Yeah, I agree completely. I am not a competitor. The idea of competing terrifies me. I've done it a few times. And
Yeah.
so I, funny story, I remember really clearly my first ever competition, I went and did nationals just because, you know, why not?
Why not?
Why not? My partner was doing it already. So we flew down to Melbourne. I was a white belt. I remember getting on the mats. I realized that the lady that I was going against, lovely girl, had no hair. And I was like, oh, okay, that's fine, whatever. But I then realized she took this a lot more seriously than I did. And I remember pulling guard. I remember nothing. And I remember
that was it.
waking up and she was in mount. And I was like, oh, okay, well, that's the end of me. And that was pretty much the end of my competitive career. So I always take my hat off to people who push through that that anxiety, and that they can feel comfortable in an uncomfortable place, and that they're okay with doing those hard things. And so then whenever I had kids in my gym who were competing, and we had a lot of kids that would compete, I was always that person that was that support on the side, that was like, okay, I'm the person that you come to gain that that empathy, that support when things either go really well or when they don't necessarily have the outcome that you're looking for, and I'm going to help you to understand what happened, why, and how to work through that. Whereas partner, he's the competitor guy, so he would be like the one that would be, you know, getting them through it and getting them ready for that kind of thing. But yeah, I take my hat off to anyone who's doing that.
But like,
so
it's a weird thing as well, because it's always something that, like, I've always thought about personally as well, because there's a few conflicting probably data, and there's like conflicting anecdotal evidence, right? Of if you're trying to build competitors, like, do you need to have been a successful coach, like a successful competitor, to coach good competitors? I don't know. I think it gives you some empathy to a degree, like you have an idea of what maybe the athlete's going through. But, you know, I look at football as a sport, right? Like, you'll probably call it soccer, but it's called football. If you look
my
at football
partner's Brazilian, I'll call it football. He calls it football, I call it football.
If you look at football in the UK, right, like, you have managers of teams, right, and some of the best footballers in the world, right, have never been quite successful managers, and some of the greatest managers were like bang average footballers. And I know it's a slightly different sport, and obviously we're very young and very, like, you know, immature compared to the maturity of football and things like that. But, you know, I look at Danaher as a great reference, one of the best coaches in the world. There's reasons around that, in my opinion, why, like, you know, he also has the best athletes in the room, and everyone's drawn to go and train there now, which helps, of course. But he still built those guys up from, you know, nothing to what they are, and he never compete to a high level. Like, of course, there's like you said, there's the stories of when he used to train and things like that back in the day, that he was a nightmare, and he was like a really good round. And then you've got your AOJ, right? You've got, like, you know, your Guy and Hafa Mendes, and your Andre from ATOS headquarters, and all the coaches there, Murasaki, Sarah, that are all world champions and ridiculously high level competitors, but also incredible coaches. So I don't think there's a set rigid way. And I think Jiu Jitsu is one of those sports that attracts certain types of individuals that believe in their mythology very strongly, or believe in their systems very strongly. Like you say, like, you know, I've seen the whole debate between traditional, CLA. You see the whole debate between, you know, all sorts of different topics that go on in jiu-jitsu, right? And everyone believes in theirs, and everyone's correct, and everyone else is wrong. And I think that is probably what is a limiting factor in the progression of our sport, because I never look at things too linearly. I don't look at one thing as being great and one thing as being terrible. I just try to draw from everything. And I think that's, again, to refer back to the business things that we spoke about earlier, I think that's a skill set that I've always had, which is to learn from every experience, take the best of each thing that's going on and try to, add it to myself or add it to my academy. And I try not to be too rigid. I try not to be too set in my ways, which, like I say, the attraction of girls that get into this sport, they're very tribal, they're very traditionalist sometimes. And I think without even realizing it, we can put ourselves in like a glass box. We can really limit and put limitations on what we can achieve just based on lack of education and lack of knowledge, and actually lack of wanting knowledge, because what we believe is correct, we believe in, and there's no space for anything else, which is a very negative, like in any other area of your life that would be so negative to do, but in jiu-jitsu it's actually praised, and it's like celebrated in a weird way, like, we are this team and we believe in this mythology, and whoa, like it's us against the rest. Like you had the whole thing even when like Danaher's team started, it was like leg lockers versus no leg lockers. I was like, well, it's such a ridiculous statement. Like, it's jiu-jitsu at the end of the day, that it's just one element that they're super good in, that everyone else is terrible in. Like, why does every new thing have to become a debate, and everything has to have like has to be labeled? Do you know what I mean? Whereas for me, it's just the sport. It's evolving. You'll have people label things now. They'll be like, oh, we're J point camping. That's just passing to me, mate. Like, that's always just been passing. Like, but we have to create these new trends and new ideas. And I get it. People are trying to sell instructionals, but for the progression of the sport, I think you have to take everything that comes with it, and everyone and everything that comes with it, right? There's going to be good guys, going to be bad guys, going to be people you agree with, people that you don't. But that's just, you have to take the sport in its entirety. You can't just take what you want out of it and ignore everyone else.
Yeah, and we spoke even before about, how can you become the best coach that you can possibly be when you are not actually engaging in anything other than what you see and believe in. Like, how can you purposely say that what you are coaching and what you are doing is the best, most effective, the absolute way to teach, whether it's kids, whether it's adults, if you're not purposely taking the time to study and engage in anything else? Like, you, just because you, and I'm not a black belt, but just because you get to the point where you have the black belt, that's not the end of your learning journey.
Yeah.
Like,
how I actually view it and how I see it is, and this is through, training at multiple academies and multiple places, that people become very rigid in what they are. So, let's say, for example, you train 10 years, you become a black belt. That knowledge that you've accumulated in that 12 years normally ends up being the end of your learning, because you go set up an academy, like you say, and you go, well, I know all of this, and this is all that I'm going to pass on. How I approach it with my shoes, I'm very honest. I say, well, this is what I know. This is what I'm capable of. This is what I do very well and what I don't do so well, because there's still holes in my game, of course. But this is what I'm working on myself. This is what I'm trying to learn. I use the access of the internet and instructionals or things that you can see online, of course, to try and add to my own game. I compete regularly, to the level that I used to. Who knows? I try my best, right? I still manage to medal at majors and things, and I might not be hitting like number one and top spot, but I'm getting in and amongst the medals, so I'm happy with that. But I also use that as a learning experience, and I also use that as an experience to show others. So my school and my students know that I can be beat. I'm not like this figure above everybody else. But also, when I do get beat, look at my reaction. I'm in here, I'm working on exactly how I lost, why I lost that position. I'm trying to fix it, I'm trying to improve it. I'm learning new skills, and I'm passing that on to everyone else. So I think it's kind of like the old martial arts, like the traditional like karates of the world, where some of these guys get to black belt and they just think like, I'm all knowing, and this is my, now I just pass on what I know, instead of trying to continue to learn. So, of course, you know more than probably the average guy, but you also have a lot to learn and a lot to develop. And that's why if I look at people like Andre, Danaher, AOJ, they're always innovating. They're always coming up with new ideas. of course, they're absolutely blessed to be surrounded by incredible students too that will come up with things and challenge things in new ways, and you can, make new systems or new ideas around that, which of course is very important too. You can't be creative unless people are challenging you. But I think so many people get to that black belt and then just go, that's my knowledge, I have it, and then I'm only going to pass on that. I'm not going to try to add to it,
Yeah.
which is unfortunate. It really is. It's unfortunate, but I also get it to a degree. Like if you're very isolated or you're a coach of an academy, sometimes it can be hard to have that want to improve and learn more, because you can get tied up and focused, like I said, on the business, on everything else involved. So I do understand it. I'm not trying to knock anyone, but me personally, like I said, I've tried to build a team that now actually it frees up my time to learn more, and I might not be as young and as athletic as I used to be, but I still have a brain and I can still learn and improve. So that's the most important part for me.
Yeah. Do you think how do you maintain your own passion for jiu-jitsu when you're a business owner? And so I think that this is something that can be very hard, is that we think back to a few years ago when you didn't necessarily have the resources and the skilled people that you now have.
Yeah.
I think it's easy to get burnt out and you start to actually resent the thing that you love,
Yeah.
because you realize that your passion and your job have become the same thing, and then it's
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, hang on. Did you maintain that passion and maintain your ability to keep going, to get to the success that
Yeah.
you've been able to?
It's very difficult, and weirdly, not so long ago, and I'm not going to say recently, but I've had those thoughts personally too, and I've had
Mm.
those challenges and a little bit of like roadblocks in, you know, to give you my backstory, right? Like I lived in that average area, like a council estate, we call them in the UK, like how everyone else did. Like I didn't grow up with any money or wealth or anything like that. Like my parents ended up being like quite successful as I got to like an older teen. So as a young kid, as a young man, I didn't have access to a lot of things. Jiu-jitsu was kind of like, it's not now, which is also a thing that I try to be as accessible as possible. But it was kind of a sport that I could do that was cheap in a way. Like it wasn't that expensive. I had like a judo gi, an Adidas judo gi that was about £40. It was like the cheapest gi you could get. I went to classes that were like £3-4 a class. Obviously, as I got better and I understood jiu-jitsu more, I ended up going to more like affiliate gyms and academies, like proper premium schools. But in the beginning, I was so passionate about it because it gave me this way of feeling even or level with other people, right? If they were financially more successful than me, or they were more intelligent than me, or whatever they had that was over me, I had an opportunity to kind of level that playing field by grappling and just being good at jiu-jitsu, right? And the passion then came that, obviously I was doing well competitively. I was becoming relatively successful competing. I opened my school and I started to earn, good money. And that's where like the passion was, right? Because this is something that took me from, not the greatest of starts to this incredible, exciting opportunity where, I have endless earning potential to a degree. Obviously, we all know that's not true, but, I was like, well, if this is what I'm getting on 100 members, what about when I have like 10,000 members, right? Like, oh my God, like I'm on the calculator every day doing like £60 membership times 1,000. Oh my God, I'm going to get that. Oh my, and I just had this crazy passion to like grow, compete, try and win. And then as I became like a dad as well, and I had 2 kids, I was like, well, now they go swimming, they do gymnastics, they go to football if they want to go, they go to jiu-jitsu. And I actually sat there and I was like, I never had the opportunity to necessarily do all like some of these sports or try these new experiences myself. And I was like, I've done a lot and I've been successful and I've traveled and I've competed everywhere, but I almost felt like I hadn't done a lot with my life in a weird way, because it's all been tied up in this like passion project of jiu-jitsu. I was like, I've done all these things, but it almost felt like I didn't do anything for me, because I felt like I was building this for everyone else. And, I'm the arrowhead of the school, right? So like it's always I'm trying to lead from the front and keep driving on to give more back to everyone else behind me, whether that's coaches up and coming or whether that's, you know, business opportunities for others. And I just felt like, man, what have I got for me? Like, because that passion that I had, like that jiu-jitsu where it was just me competing, even being coached, you know, like I have a great friend of mine that I met not too long ago, and I went to his academy on a Sunday for a session. And you know, I just said, just coach the session. I don't want to talk. I don't want to be. I just want to jog around the mat with everyone else. I want to be put in specific positions. I want to be have people on my back attacking me. I want to wrestle at the end and do the free sparring. And literally, that it was only a few months ago. I did a session. I did a jiu-jitsu session where no one asked me a question. No one cared for my opinion because they didn't know who I was and I was in someone else's academy. I didn't have the whole when I come in, oh, Tom's here, shall I ask him this, shall I ask him that? Oh, my membership, oh, my. I had none of that go on. And I just did jiu-jitsu for the first time in probably the last 5 years to how it used to be. And it was such a beautiful feeling. Like I was so happy when I finished. I was driving home in the car. I was sore as anything because I had everyone trying to kill me for like 2 hours. But I was like, man, I've done my first jiu-jitsu session in like 5 years. Because when I come here, of course I train and I work hard, but you know, everyone looks up to you or everyone's direction is towards you a lot. And I was in there and no one cared. And I was like, that is beautiful. And obviously I'm fortunate enough to get that when I travel. So if I go and compete at Worlds or whatever, I'll go into various gyms or headquarters or, you know, wherever. And, you know, I'm not a big deal. Nobody really cares. And I can just train jiu-jitsu and it's a beautiful feeling. But it is to keep that passion is very difficult. And thankfully now, like my kids train, my kids are competing. So that's kind of not reignited any passion because I don't think I ever lost it. But I think passion is a lot like anything else. Like it's like relationships like that. It's always evolving. It requires different inputs from you at different times. And, you know, it's easy to have burning passion when you're on your own, you're like running through divisions, you're getting paid. Like I see all these young guys now and like that's how I used to feel. Like, you know, they're winning comps, they're like screaming, like they've got cameras in their face, they've got vlogs going on, they've got everything they want right now. But when you have to dig deep and you have to go through those transitional phases of not being in your prime or being like super young and you have a family to look after or maintain and now you're starting to invest into a gym or trying to earn a good income or living, that's when your passion is challenged. And I've seen a lot of guys that have been incredibly successful, not to name names, so I won't want to out them, but I've seen a lot of guys that are incredibly successful. They start coaching and realizing the importance of like financial stability as they get a little bit older, and they drastically fade away or their level drastically drops. And it's unfortunate. I think it does happen. It can happen. Thankfully for me, I've managed to keep that off as much as possible. Right, I still compete to a decent level, like I said, but it will have a big impact, and I don't think most athletes are prepared for that. I'm fortunate enough to have like great friends that are like pro athletes in like football and things like that, and again, they're very much similar in the fact that, you know, this doesn't last forever. So what are we actually setting the foundations for in the future? And the transitional phase, and I'm still yet to go through it. I haven't retired from competing by any means, but that transitional phase of going from being the man or the guy or that alpha male that's out there doing it and getting it, you know, and chasing these dreams and these medals to being a servant to others, which is essentially that's going to be all you are, is to serve others now and give back to them and help them. It's a really, really weird transition. And I think a lot of people struggle with it. And, you know, I'm not saying I've found it easy because I'm in that middle phase of it all, really. It's not always easy because you can feel a little bit less about yourself, or you can feel like, oh man, like I'm not the guy anymore. Like no one's looking up to me for like this cool achievement. But I'm also creating a team that are achieving. I've got, you know, the girls that are winning everything. I've got my own kids that are winning gold medals. So it's about not living through them in a negative way, but that now becomes like your passion and purpose over, you know, just winning gold medals, which is quite, you know, superficial, if I'm honest. When you actually like scrape back the layers, it's quite superficial.
But it's really, really true. I know that my partner has gone through the same thing with competing and things like that, where now he's like, he knows, I mean, he's 31, like he's still got a few years
Yeah,
left in
yeah.
him.
Like, listen, we're not
But,
old. I'm 30.
like,
I'm not saying
yeah,
this
like
is like a 50-year-old guy,
that's it. We've
but
still got a few
man,
years left in
in
them.
this sport,
That's
in these
it.
days now, the kids are black belts from 19. You know, look at
Yeah.
Mikas, Tynans. They're unbelievable, and they're so young, man.
Yeah, and you just know, and the thing that he says is like he knows that one day there is gonna be some 16, 17-year-old kid that walks in our doors and smashes him. And he's like,
Yeah,
you know what? I know that this is gonna happen because I'm not that young anymore.
yeah,
Competing is not my whole thing. But the day that it does happen, I hope it's one of my own students that does it to me. And I
yeah.
really hope that I can sit there and be like, that was pretty cool.
Happy about it.
Yeah, that's it. You're happy
Yeah,
because you're like, okay, yeah, I just got smashed, but
yeah,
how cool that it came from something that you worked so hard and passionately for to be
yeah.
able to give back to those people that then do that.
Yeah,
So,
I agree a
yeah,
1000%. Yeah, it's but all of these things are transitional phases, man. You know, and it's how you approach them. Like I say, like some people are super rigid, so they struggle with it, and you can see people that are rigid. You can see people that struggle to take criticism or struggle to, you know, kind of move around things, and you know, I've said, like I get the most stick. I get criticism all the time. I get people, you know, whatever. Like, who cares? Who cares?
yeah,
You know what I mean? Like, I'm moving on. I'm moving forward. I'm happy. I'm doing what I'm doing. So, you know, that's all I focus on is the next step. And you know, if that next step isn't competing or isn't world titles, and it's being a coach, so be it. You know, if it's something different, so be it. Like, I'm very fluid in my life, and I just, you know, move with it. You know what I mean? This is how
yeah.
I am.
I think it's a really good mindset to have.
Yeah,
And
I think it's important. I think
yeah,
it's so important. I really do. Um, I think it served me
yeah,
very well. Like, and again, not to, I only really have jiu-jitsu and business to reference because like that's all I've like kind of done. But it's worked very well in both of those like settings, in both of those arenas, like whether that's been competing or training, and whether that's been in business. And I think that's why potentially, you know, some of these guys that maybe don't have that mindset or don't understand that struggle more business wise, and probably have need more support or need more help.
mm,
And I don't mean that in like a condescending way. That could be great coaches. That could be even my coaches and my staff. Like, you know, they might be in a position where they may be not as confident in that area or that arena because they're not as flexible because they haven't had to take those rejections and bumps on the way. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
simple.
I love where this conversation has gone because it went nowhere where I thought it was going to go, but everywhere that was really, really good. So that's the
And
beauty
I'm
of
hoping there's some cool sound bites. I love that one earlier. We got to clip that one. That's gonna be
you're
sick.
gonna clip it. We're gonna clip it for sure. So I do apologize that it didn't go where we thought it was going to go, but
That was good.
I think it's really important to have this conversation because it's coming from a place where a lot of people are coaches and business owners and are looking to that next thing where it's like, well, what do I do now? Or I want to
Yeah,
have a gym, or I have a gym and I feel like I'm a slave to my gym. And yeah, it was
yeah,
really, really worthwhile.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of people in similar boats. A lot of people in similar positions, and like I said, I think we all get into it for different reasons. I think we all, you know, start gyms for different reasons, right? Some people are financially motivated. Some people are just passion.
Mm.
Some people are like, again, there's like a rigidness to a lot of what we do. I think some people just think it's the natural step, like it's the
That's
natural
what you do.
process. You
Yeah.
know, like it's actually become quite traditional. Like, and weirdly, as jiu-jitsu guys and girls, we've always been so non-traditional because we've always done something that's a little bit different and a little bit crazy compared to others.
Yeah.
But there's actually traditions and rigidness inside of a non-rigid and traditional sport. It's weird because, you know, you get the whole thing like leave school, go to uni, get a job, get married, have kids, you know, work really hard, get a good salary and whatever. Like that, to me, that's traditional and rigid, but
Yeah.
doing jiu-jitsu wasn't. But then I think, well, I've just actually followed every basic step in Jiu Jitsu too. I've just gone and done the same rigid stuff. I've helped out kids class. I've started competing. I've started teaching my own kids class. Now I've opened my own gyms. I've put this like noose around my neck of like needing to pay the bills, panic, stress, anxiety. I'm still trying to compete. I'm still trying to do this. And then I'm like, at the same time, I've just gone and followed everybody the same way.
The same
So
thing. Yeah.
I'm sitting here thinking I'm like a non-traditionalist. And I'm like the most traditionalist, basic jiu-jitsu gym owner there is.
Oh, I love it so
I thought I
much.
was really cool, but I'm just like everyone else.
We're just like everyone else. 100%. All right. Well, this is going to kick us off in a minute anyway. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say goodbyes. But honestly,
All right.
thank you so much for the chat.
Thank you.
It was so
I
good.
loved
Thank
it, man.
you.
That's one of the best ones I've ever done. I love that. Thanks so
Oh,
much.
it was so good. So thank you so much for chatting with me, Tom. I really appreciate it. And
All
poor
right.
Serena in the background. I'm going to grab Serena
Yeah,
and have a chat with
she's
her
in the class
again.
now. Then I flip the camera. I don't even
Ah,
know.
she's
How
up.
do I do it? Oh, they're in
Oh,
the
God.
class.
Ah, cool.
They're
They're
over
all
there
doing their
training.
thing. Cool. And I'll send you a message, Tom, because I really want you to get in contact with my partner.
Yeah, 1000%. Let's do it.
Cool. I'll talk to you soon. See you later.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.